I want to say right up top that it's incredibly difficult to discuss these types of films in any depth without wandering into spoiler territory. Virtually anything you say, even an observation about tone or structure, inevitably crosses that line. So here's your warning. I will be spoiling this film later in this video. But first, if you want my spoiler free version of my thoughts, it's this. Rian Johnson has done it again. He's now crafted three of the finest, funniest, zaniest, most thoroughly entertaining whodunits of the 21st century, and it's going to be a sad day when he finally hangs up Benoit Blanc's Kentucky Fried accent and calls it quits, because I would happily watch Blanc investigate mysteries for as long as Hercule Poirot has managed to persist decades on decades, changing faces, but never losing that mythic quality. I really feel like he struck gold with this character. More than Knives Out or even Glass Onion, Wake Up Dead Man is a laugh out loud riot that still finds room, ample room, for a surprisingly layered exploration of faith, religion, humanity, and greed. It features top-notch performances, especially from Josh O'Connor and Glenn Close. It's shot with inventive camera work, bold lighting choices, and the kind of visual playfulness that keeps even the quietest scenes lively. And at its core lies a mystery that feels impossible to solve until suddenly it isn't. That's Johnson's magic trick. Misdirect with entertainment, with colorful characters, with flashy cinematography, and then yank the rug out from under you precisely when you feel certain that you've got it all figured out. So my spoiler-free reaction is simple. Bravo, Rian Johnson. I cannot wait to see what you're cooking up next for Benoit Blanc. This is a genuine crowd pleaser. Try to see this in a theater if you can, even though Netflix's track record doesn't make that easy. I saw this film at a packed screening at the Paris Theater here in Manhattan, and the audience was fully on board, laughing exactly where they should, sniffling where they should, buzzing with energy in a way that you could just feel in your chest. It's the kind of communal movie experience that reminds you why theaters matter. All right, from here on out, I will be lightly spoiling this movie, but I will not touch on who the killer is. So just note that going forward. So let me put it right out there. This might be my favorite of the three Knives Out mysteries so far, but honestly, picking a favorite feels kind of mood dependent. Each entry scratches a slightly different itch. One thing that really stood out to me this time is how a lot of big directors in 2025 seem to be finally saying, all right, fine, let's actually talk about what's going on in the world right now. And while the Knives Out movies have always had some social commentary baked in, this one feels a little sharper about it. And what's cool is that Rian Johnson never does the obvious thing. He never pulls the, look, it's Donald Trump card or makes some cringy one-to-one parody. Instead, he kind of sneaks it in through tone and character behavior. It's subtle enough that it never becomes annoying. The first movie was really about money and entitlement. The second was about rich people's stupidity taken to the absolute extreme. This one shifts gears a bit. It's more about what happens when people latch onto a charismatic authority figure because it's easier than thinking for themselves. Remind you of anything? And the movie isn't shy about showing how certain old school attitudes like sexism, bitterness, resentment are still floating under the surface, especially in communities where tradition is treated as a get out of jail free card. And a big part of that is how the movie handles religion. Rian Johnson doesn't mock it. He doesn't blindly praise it either. He treats it like something that can be genuinely meaningful to people, but can also be twisted into something exclusionary if you're not careful. It's surprisingly balanced. Honestly, what impressed me most is that Rian Johnson just goes for it. He talks about religion and politics in the same movie without it turning into some snarky Twitter argument. Somehow, he makes it feel thoughtful and fair to people on all sides. I really think this movie is going to spark actual conversations, like real interesting ones, not the usual culture war yelling, and that's pretty rare. For instance, there's this quote from the movie when Benoit Blanc first meets Father Judd, the Josh O'Connor character. Benoit shows up and he flat out says, I'm an atheist. And Judd just comes out and says, you know what, you're right. It's storytelling, the rites, the rituals, costumes, all of it. It's storytelling. I guess the question is, do these stories convince us of a lie, or do they resonate with something deep inside us that's profoundly true, that we can't express any other way except storytelling? Now, I, for one, come from a pretty religious background. My grandfather was a priest in the Russian Orthodox Church. My family grew up very religious. I was an altar boy. Religion and spirituality has been a pretty big part of my life, while simultaneously being something I'm inherently skeptical about. And I do find myself siding with Father Judd here. There is power in these things, but as the film shows us, there's great danger as well. Many of the characters in Wake Up Dead Man define themselves first and foremost as Christians. staunch churchgoers certain of their own moral high ground. But scratch the surface, and you discover skeletons everywhere. These characters are often more grotesque than their piety would suggest, especially on how they justify their desires, their schemes, and their grievances. Daryl McCormick's character is a failed politician. He has one especially telling moment pretty early on. He explains to Josh Brolin's character this political tactic: identify something that people fear and convince them that this feared thing is responsible for all their problems. You don't need a deep dive to see how that reflects the world we're currently living in. Christian nationalism on the rise, moral posturing used as a cudgel, and the demonizing of everything from wokeness to immigration to somehow Tylenol. These elements are woven throughout the film, usually for laughs, and the audience I saw it with reacted viscerally to them, as did I. But let's talk about the ensemble, because this one features another great one. And I have to start with Josh O'Connor. This is technically a Benoit Blac story. His name is practically in the subtitle. After all, a Knives Out mystery could be considered a Benoit Blac mystery. But make no mistake, this is Josh O'Connor's movie. Daniel Craig is plastered all over the marketing, and he's in the film. But for what feels like the first hour, Benoit Blac is nowhere to be seen. O'Connor is our protagonist, our narrator, our audience surrogate. He plays a young priest assigned to a church in upstate New York, Our Lady of Perpetual Fortitude, led by Monsignor Jefferson Wicks, played by Josh Brolin. Through O'Connor's narration, we meet the congregation: Glenn Close as the church's bookkeeper and a fiercely devout Christian, Jeremy Renner as a local doctor embroiled in a nasty divorce, Kerry Washington as a lawyer whose adopted son, Daryl McCormick, may actually be her secret half-brother, depending on town gossip. Andrew Scott is a reclusive sci-fi author. He's irritable and convinced the liberal agenda is destroying everything he holds dear. Cailee Spaeney is a former concert cellist disabled by illness, now seeking guidance and praying for a miracle. And Thomas Hayden Church plays the groundskeeper and eccentric, slightly ominous figure who credits Monsignor Wicks for inspiring his sobriety. And of course, if you know anything about these movies, someone's gotta die. The victim is Monsignor Jefferson Wicks, stabbed in an otherwise empty storage closet in what appears to be an impossible murder. Cue Benoit Blac finally arriving on scene, ready to deduce who plunged the knife into the good Monsignor's back. It's a familiar setup. Johnson knows we know the formula, but he always finds a way to polish it and to recontextualize it or color it differently. Not reinventing the wheel, perhaps, but repainting it in a shade we've never quite seen before. The twist, this time, the entire first half of the film is told from O'Connor's perspective, almost like a diary. It's only about halfway through that we discover that he is literally writing these entries for Benoit Blac as part of an attempt to clear his name, since he has become the prime suspect. It's a clever structural turn. Despite being, in my opinion, the funniest film in the trilogy, Wake Up Dead Man carries a darker, almost gothic undercurrent. Christianity, confession, moral hypocrisy, the texture of faith. Rian Johnson digs into all of it. The setting reinforces that tone, not the airy, sun-drenched island of Glass Onion or the cozy Massachusetts manor of Knives Out. This feels like a Stephen King town, middle of nowhere, upstate New York or New England, dense woods, creaking churches, damp soil. You half expect I Know What You Did Last Summer teens to sprint through the frame at any minute. During the Q&A that I attended after the screening, Rian Johnson talked about his desire to make each film distinct. He bristled at the misconception that Agatha Christie wrote the same story over and over, because she didn't. She moved between genres, slasher stories, upper crust dramas, detective procedurals. Each book was its own thing, and Rian Johnson approaches the Benoit Blac films the same way. In that sense, Wake Up Dead Man feels like a direct extension of the previous two while also standing firmly on its own feet. But what surprised me most was how emotional this film gets. There's one scene in particular, maybe my favorite of the film, that nearly got me choked up. Josh O'Connor's character is desperately chasing down leads, trying to clear his name. He calls a construction company looking for information, introduces himself as the priest at the local church, and the woman on the other end begins crying. Her mother is in hospice, and she asks him to pray for her. And in that moment, Josh O'Connor snaps back into his higher calling. He remembers why he wears the collar. Despite the crisis he's in, he steps out of the room, he slows down, and he listens to this woman, and he comforts her. Meanwhile, Benoit Blac is practically vibrating in the doorway, gesturing frantically for him to get back to the clue hunting, tapping his watch, but Josh O'Connor pauses and chooses compassion. That moment is the heartbeat of the film. And you know, Greta Gerwig once said that the reason she made Barbie was for that single scene on the bus bench, the quiet, human one that the studio wanted to cut. This scene in Wake Up Dead Man feels like Rian Johnson's equivalent. It's where the film breathes, it's where the story reveals its soul. I think a big part of why this movie hit me so hard is Josh O'Connor's character, Father Judd. There's something really honest about the way he's written. He believes deeply in what he does, and he's constantly frustrated by how the people around him twist that belief into something petty or self-serving. He wants things to actually be better, not just look better. And yeah, sometimes that pushes him into pride or bitterness, but you get why. He genuinely cares about the people in this community. He wants to understand them. He wants to help them, not just hand them easy answers. Putting Father Judd next to Benoit Blac is honestly one of the smartest things that Rian Johnson does here. They bounce off of each other in a way that brings out different sides of both of them. This is the most alive Benoit Blac has ever felt, not just solving an impossible puzzle, but actually being pushed to confront how he sees the world, how he talks to people, what he thinks his actual job is. And just as a side note, my girlfriend and I have been rewatching House lately, and this reminded me a lot of that show. In the later seasons, House slowly shifts from being this genius robot doctor to an actual person. And Benoit Blac feels the same way here. At the beginning of the film, he's clearly having fun, another mystery, another game. And then there's a moment where it hits him, oh, this isn't fun anymore. And honestly, maybe it never was. I want to talk about performances briefly. Josh O'Connor is extraordinary here, maybe career best work. The way he balances youthful uncertainty, devout Christian sincerity, frantic self-preservation, and tender-heartedness is just masterful. I'd love to see his name in awards conversations, even though, let's be honest, this is a genre that kind of gets shut out of recognition. Glenn Close is a close second standout. She begins the film with this large, boisterous, borderline caricature energy, playing this church bookkeeper as both comic relief and moral center. But as the story deepens, she peels back layers, revealing new shades of her character in ways that feel deliberate and beautifully paced. And without spoiling specifics, the final reveal was very strong, in my opinion. It lands, it's satisfying, not just mechanically, but emotionally, which is harder to pull off than people realize. Now, I do have a couple of hangups with this movie. They're not major ones, though. The film is long, not unnecessarily long, in my opinion, but long enough that you start to notice which characters aren't getting much space to breathe. For instance, Kerry Washington's character and Cailee Spaeney's character feel pretty underutilized. Mila Kunis as the local police chief veers into stunt casting territory because honestly, you could cast almost anyone in that role since her job mostly consists of entering rooms to say, "You're under arrest," or "You, go check out that closet." Even characters who do get more attention, like Jeremy Renner or Andrew Scott or Daryl McCormick, appear in sort of like tantalizing glimpses. I wanted more of the group scenes, the big ensemble collisions. Those are the lifeblood of these movies, and here they're just a little bit sparse. My final thoughts are this. Wake Up Dead Man is easily one of my favorite films of the year. I had an amazing time watching it, and it's funny, each time a new Benoit Blac mystery gets announced, I find myself irrationally doubting it, assuming that the magic will just fade. And every time Rian Johnson proves me wrong. At this point, I should just stop doubting him altogether. He knows that he can't simply outsmart the audience. We're all too familiar with the tropes. So he doesn't rely on cheeky hints or constant misdirection. Instead, he trusts us to trap ourselves in our own predictions while he tells a twisty, morally sharp story about greed, murder, faith, and fear. He sprinkles in social commentary that feels both timely and natural. He surrounds it with a cast of delightfully deranged characters and just lets them run wild. The result is pure cinema, mystery, laughs, heart, a satisfying ending, and the distinct joy of knowing, hoping, really, that we'll get to do it all over again when the next installment arrives. Also, this movie is worth the price of admission just to hear Benoit Blac say Scooby-Dooby-Doo. If you've seen the movie, you for sure remember that part. But what did you guys think of Wake Up Dead Man? How does it stack up in the Knives Out trilogy thus far? I think it might be my favorite, although I'm going to have to do a rewatch of the first two and then this one again, just to solidify that opinion, which, in all honesty, I'm excited to do. I seriously, like a lot of people out there, would love to have a dozen of these. I would like one every year, right around Christmas time or Thanksgiving. They feel like holiday movies somehow. I don't know how, but they really do. But that's going to do it for me on this one. Once you're done down in the comments, don't forget to like this video, hit the subscribe button, and hit the bell to be notified when new videos come out on this channel. Don't forget to follow me over on Letterboxd so you can see what I'm watching when I'm watching it, and I'll see you all next time.